Listen carefully, because what I'm about to say has the power to change the way you experience life forever. Emotional strength is not about suppressing feelings. It is about mastering them. It is about reaching a place where life does not control your responses. You do. When you become emotionally untouchable, you are no longer a prisoner of people, circumstances, or opinions. Let us walk through these 9 transformative habits. Let me begin with a truth that may challenge you, but if you accept it, it will liberate you. No human being on this planet has the power to control your emotions unless you give them permission. Most people live their entire lives in emotional bondage because they have unknowingly handed over the keys to their inner world. They say things like, you made me angry, they hurt my feelings, or that situation stressed me out. But listen carefully. Those statements are not expressions of truth. They are confessions of surrender. When you say someone made you feel a certain way, what you are really saying is, I have given you authority over my internal state. And anytime you give someone that level of authority, you become emotionally vulnerable, unstable, and easily manipulated. Emotionally untouchable individuals refuse to live that way. They understand a powerful principle. Stimulus is external, but response is internal. Life will always present you with situations, some good, some painful, some unfair. But the meaning you assign to those situations and the emotional reaction you produce is always your choice. Now, I am not saying you will not feel emotions. You are human. You will feel anger, disappointment, frustration, even sadness. But the difference is this: emotionally mature people do not allow their feelings to control their behavior. They acknowledge their emotions, but they do not become enslaved by them. You must reach a point where you pause and ask yourself a simple but transformative question. Why am I choosing to feel this way? That question shifts you from being a victim to being in control. For example, someone may insult you. One person reacts with anger, raises their voice, and creates conflict. Another person hears the same words and remains calm, composed, and unbothered. What is the difference? It is not the situation. It is the interpretation and the decision. You see, events do not control you. Your perception of events does. When you take responsibility for your emotions, you begin to examine your interpretations. You begin to challenge your assumptions. You begin to realize that many of your emotional reactions are not caused by reality, but by the story you are telling yourself about reality. And here is where your power lies. You can change the story. If someone ignores you, you can tell yourself, they don't respect me, and feel hurt. Or you can say, perhaps they are busy or dealing with something, and remain at peace. Same situation, different interpretation, different emotional outcome. Emotionally untouchable people are masters of interpretation. They do not jump to conclusions. They do not allow their minds to exaggerate negativity. They train themselves to think in ways that preserve their peace rather than destroy it. But responsibility goes even deeper than interpretation. It extends to your reactions. You must discipline yourself to respond, not react. A reaction is immediate, emotional, and often uncontrolled. A response is thoughtful, measured, and intentional. The gap between what happens to you and how you respond to it is where your power exists. And the wider that gap becomes, the stronger you become. This means you do not allow temporary emotions to produce permanent consequences. You do not say things in anger that you will regret later. You do not make decisions in frustration that will cost you your future. Instead, you pause, you breathe, you think, because you understand that emotional discipline is not weakness, it is strength under control. Now let me take you deeper. Taking responsibility for your emotions also means you stop expecting others to manage them for you. Many people enter relationships, whether personal or professional, with unrealistic expectations. They expect others to always understand them, validate them, and treat them perfectly. But people are imperfect. If your emotional stability depends on perfect behavior from imperfect people, you will always be unstable. Emotionally untouchable individuals free themselves from that dependency. They do not rely on others to feel whole. They do not depend on external behavior to maintain internal peace. They become self-regulated. This does not mean they tolerate disrespect or mistreatment. No, let's say It means they choose their responses wisely. They address issues calmly. They set boundaries firmly, but they do not lose control of themselves in the process. And that is the difference. Anyone can react. Anyone can lose their temper. Anyone can allow emotions to take over. But it takes maturity, awareness, and discipline to remain in control when everything around you is trying to provoke you. So here is the principle you must embrace. You are the guardian of your emotional state. No one else has that responsibility. No one else has that authority. The moment you accept this fully, your life will begin to change. You will stop being easily offended. You will stop being easily manipulated. You will stop being controlled by circumstances. Instead, you will become stable, grounded, unshakable. And that is the beginning of becoming emotionally untouchable. Let me speak to a deep issue that silently controls the lives of many people: the need for approval. There is a dangerous habit that keeps individuals emotionally weak, unstable, and easily manipulated. And that habit is seeking validation from others. When you depend on people to tell you who you are, you will never truly know yourself. You must understand this: whatever you depend on, you become a slave to. If you depend on applause, you will perform for it. If you depend on acceptance, you will compromise for it. If you depend on approval, you will adjust your identity just to fit into someone else's expectations. And in the process, you lose yourself. Emotionally untouchable people refuse to live that way. They have come to a powerful realization. Their value is not determined by external opinions. It is established internally. Now listen carefully. This does not mean they ignore feedback or reject growth. No, it means they are not controlled by it. There is a difference between listening and depending. When you are dependent on validation, every compliment lifts you and every criticism destroys you. You become emotionally unstable because your identity is constantly shifting based on other people's perceptions. But when you are internally grounded, you become consistent. You are not overly excited by praise and you are not crushed by criticism. You remain steady, and that is emotional strength. Many people today are trapped in a cycle of validation-seeking behavior. They post for approval. They speak for approval. They even live their lives for approval. They measure their worth by how many people agree with them, like them, or accept them. But let me ask you a question. What happens when the applause stops? If your confidence is built on external validation, it will collapse the moment it is not given. That is why you must build your identity on something deeper, something unshakable. You must know who you are independent of opinions. When you understand your purpose, your values, and your identity, you no longer need constant reassurance. You are self-defined, not crowd-defined, and that changes everything. You see, people who constantly seek validation often struggle with rejection. Why? Because rejection feels like a personal attack on their worth. But emotionally untouchable individuals see it differently. They understand that rejection is not always about them. It is often about preferences, perspectives, or timing. When you stop seeking validation, rejection loses its power over you. You are no longer trying to be accepted by everyone. You are focused on being aligned with who you truly are. Now let me take you deeper. Seeking validation often leads to people pleasing. You say yes when you want to say no. You agree when you actually disagree. You tolerate things you should not tolerate. Why? Because you are afraid of losing approval. But every time you betray your truth to gain acceptance, you weaken your self-respect. And without self-respect, emotional strength is impossible. Emotionally untouchable people protect their self-respect at all costs. They are willing to be misunderstood. They are willing to stand alone if necessary. Because they understand something powerful. It is better to be authentic and rejected than to be fake and accepted. Now, this does not mean you become arrogant or dismissive of others. No. It means you become secure. You can listen without being controlled. You can receive feedback without losing your identity. You can engage with others without depending on their approval. That is balance. Another danger of seeking validation is that it makes you emotionally predictable and therefore controllable. If someone knows you crave approval, they can manipulate you with praise or withdraw it to control your behavior. But when you are internally validated, no one has that leverage over you. You become free from the need to impress, free from the fear of rejection, free from the pressure to perform for acceptance. And when you are free, your emotional state becomes stable. Now, how do you develop this internal validation? You start by defining yourself. Who are you? What do you believe? And what do you stand for? What is your purpose? When these things are clear, you are no longer easily influenced by external voices. You also practice affirming yourself, not in arrogance, but in awareness. You remind yourself of your value, your growth, your progress. You stop waiting for others to recognize what you must recognize within yourself. Because if you cannot see your own worth, no amount of external validation will ever be enough. Finally, you must accept this truth. Not everyone will understand you, agree with you, or support you. And that is perfectly fine. Your goal is not to be accepted by everyone. Your goal is to be true to yourself. Emotionally untouchable people are not driven by approval. They are driven by purpose. And when your life is driven by purpose, validation becomes unnecessary. Let me introduce you to a discipline that many people underestimate, yet it holds tremendous power: the discipline of silence. In a world where everyone feels the need to speak, defend, explain, and react, silence has become rare. But hear me carefully. Silence is not weakness. Silence is control. Emotionally untouchable people understand that not every situation deserves a response. They are not driven by the pressure to prove themselves, to win every argument, or to have the last word. They have mastered something most people have not: restraint. You see, when you feel the urge to immediately respond, especially in moments of tension, offense, or disagreement, that urge is often emotional, not rational. It is driven by ego, pride, or the need to be right. But wisdom does not react impulsively. Wisdom pauses, and in that pause, there is power. Most conflicts escalate not because of the situation itself, but because of uncontrolled responses. One word leads to another. Emotions intensify, and before you know it, a small issue becomes a major problem. But imagine if you chose silence in that moment. Imagine if instead of reacting, you observed. Instead of speaking, you listened. Instead of defending, you remained composed. You would immediately change the direction of that situation. Emotionally untouchable individuals know that every response costs energy, and they are very selective about where they invest that energy. They do not waste their words on arguments that lead nowhere. They do not engage in conversations that drain their peace. They do not respond to provocation just because it is presented to them. They choose their battles wisely. Now understand this clearly. Silence does not mean you have nothing to say. It means you have enough control to decide when and if to say it. There is a difference. Many people speak not because it is necessary, but because they feel uncomfortable with silence. They feel the need to fill every gap, to explain themselves, to justify their actions. But emotionally strong individuals are comfortable in silence. They do not feel the need to constantly prove their point. They understand that not everyone is ready to understand them, and not every conversation is worth having. Let me take you deeper. Silence is also a form of protection. When you speak too much, you reveal too much, your emotions, your plans, your weaknesses, and not everyone who listens has your best interest at heart. Emotionally untouchable people are careful with their words. They understand that once words are spoken, they cannot be taken back. So they measure their speech. They ask themselves, is this necessary? Is this helpful? Is this the right moment? If the answer is no, they remain silent. And that silence preserves their dignity, their peace, and their power. Now let us address another important aspect: silence in the face of provocation. When someone insults you, disrespects you, or tries to pull you into conflict, your natural instinct may be to respond immediately. But here is the truth: not every attack requires a defense. Sometimes your silence is the strongest statement you can make. It communicates that you are not easily shaken. It shows that you are not controlled by others' opinions or behavior. It demonstrates that you are operating at a level of maturity that refuses to engage in unnecessary conflict. And that unsettles people more than any argument ever could, because when someone cannot provoke you, they cannot control you. Now, this does not mean you never speak up. There are times when you must address issues, set boundaries, and communicate clearly. But even then, your words should come from a place of calmness, not emotional reaction. You speak with intention, not impulse. You see, silence gives you time to think, time to process, time to choose the right response. And often in that time, you realize that what felt urgent was not important at all. How many arguments could have been avoided if someone had simply paused? Batinga atapona takao atwat. How many relationships could have been preserved if words had been measured? How many regrets could have been prevented if silence had been chosen over reaction? Emotionally untouchable people live with this awareness. They understand that their words carry weight and they refuse to use them carelessly. They also recognize that silence strengthens their presence. When they do speak, people listen because they are not constantly talking. Their words have impact because they are not diluted by unnecessary speech. So here is the principle you must embrace. You do not have to attend every argument you are invited to. Just because someone speaks does not mean you must respond. Just because someone provokes does not mean you must engage. You have the right to remain silent. And in many cases, that silence will protect your peace more than any words ever could. In the end, mastering silence is about mastering yourself. It is about having the discipline to hold back when your emotions want to push forward. It is about choosing peace over pride, wisdom over impulse, and control over chaos. And when you reach that level of control, you become dangerous in the best way possible. Because now nothing can easily disturb you. Nothing can easily provoke you. Nothing can easily shake you. And that is what it truly means to be emotionally untouchable. Let me introduce you to a principle that has the power to immediately reduce stress, anxiety, and emotional instability in your life. The discipline of detachment. Many people are emotionally exhausted, not because life is too difficult, but because they are trying to control things that were never within their authority to begin with. And when you attempt to control the uncontrollable, frustration is inevitable. You must come to a place of understanding this truth. There are things you can control and there are things you cannot. You can control your thoughts. You can control your actions. You can control your attitude. But you cannot control other people's behavior. You cannot control every outcome. You cannot control timing, circumstances, or how others perceive you. Yet most people spend their energy trying to manage these external factors. They try to change people. They try to force outcomes. They try to rush timing. And when things do not go their way, they become emotionally disturbed. Emotionally untouchable people do not live this way. They have learned the art of releasing what is not theirs to carry. Detachment does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean you become indifferent or disconnected. No, detachment means you care without becoming controlled. It means you give your best effort, but you do not tie your emotional stability to the result. Let me explain. Many people attach their emotions to outcomes. If things go well, they feel happy. If things go wrong, they feel devastated. Their emotional state is constantly fluctuating because it is dependent on circumstances. But emotionally untouchable individuals operate differently. They focus on what they can control, their effort, their discipline, their preparation, and they release the rest. They understand that once they have done their part, the outcome is no longer in their hands. And because they understand this, they remain at peace regardless of the result. Now let us take this deeper. One of the greatest sources of emotional pain is trying to control people. You want people to understand you. You want them to behave a certain way. You want them to meet your expectations. But people have their own minds, their own experiences, their own choices. And when they do not act the way you expect, you feel disappointed, frustrated, even hurt. But here is the truth. You cannot control people. You can only control how you respond to them. The moment you accept this, you free yourself from unnecessary emotional suffering. Instead of trying to change others, you begin to adjust your expectations. You set boundaries. You choose how much access people have to your life. And most importantly, you protect your peace. Emotionally untouchable people do not chase control. They practice acceptance. They accept that some people will misunderstand them. They accept that some situations will not go as planned. They accept that life is not always fair, but instead of resisting these realities, they adapt to them. And that adaptation gives them strength. Now, another area where detachment is essential is timing. Many people become anxious because things are not happening when they want them to happen. they feel behind, they feel pressured, they feel frustrated. But you must understand this, not everything is meant to happen immediately. There is a process to growth. There is a season for everything. When you try to force timing, you create unnecessary stress. But when you trust the process and remain consistent, you develop patience. Emotionally untouchable individuals are not in a rush, they are in alignment. They focus on progress, not pressure. Now let us talk about control over outcomes. You can work hard, plan carefully, and do everything right and still not get the result you expected. Does that mean you failed? No. It means that there are factors beyond your control. When you attach your identity to outcomes, you become emotionally unstable. Success makes you feel worthy, and failure makes you feel inadequate. But when you detach from outcomes, you become steady. You do your best and you let go. You learn from results, but you are not defined by them. That is emotional freedom. Detachment also protects your energy. When you stop trying to control everything, you conserve your mental and emotional resources. You stop overthinking. You stop stressing about things that are beyond your influence. And with that energy, you can focus on what truly matters: your growth, your purpose, your peace. So here is the principle you must embrace. Control what you can, release what you cannot. Do your part with excellence. Give your effort with commitment. Make your decisions with wisdom. But once you have done all that, let go. Do not carry what is not yours to carry. Do not fight battles you cannot win. Do not allow uncontrollable factors to disturb your inner peace. Because the more you release control over external things, the more control you gain over yourself. And that is the ultimate goal. In the end, emotional strength is not about controlling everything around you. It is about mastering everything within you. And when you reach that level of mastery, you become calm in chaos, steady in uncertainty, and peaceful in pressure. Nothing easily shakes you. Nothing easily disturbs you. And that is the power of true detachment, the power that makes you emotionally untouchable. Let me take you to the core of emotional mastery, the place where everything begins. Your mind. Before there is a reaction, there is a thought. Before there is a feeling, there is an interpretation. And before there is behavior, there is belief. So, if you want to become emotionally untouchable, you must learn to guard the very source of your emotions, your inner environment. Most people are careful about protecting their physical possessions, but careless about protecting their mental space. They allow anything and anyone to enter their minds. Negative conversations, toxic influences, fear-based media, and destructive opinions. And then they wonder why they feel anxious, unstable, or overwhelmed. But hear this clearly. Whatever you consistently allow into your mind will eventually shape your emotional state. Your mind is not just a passive receiver, it is a creator. It processes, interprets, and produces emotional outcomes based on what it is fed. Emotionally untouchable people understand this principle and they take it seriously. They treat their minds like valuable territory. Not everyone is allowed access. Now let us break this down. Every day you are being influenced by what you watch, what you listen to, who you talk to, and what you focus on. These inputs are constantly programming your thinking. If you surround yourself with negativity, criticism, gossip, and fear, your mind will begin to operate in that frequency. You will start expecting the worst. You will become more reactive, more defensive, more emotionally unstable. But if you intentionally choose positive, empowering, and purposeful inputs, your thinking begins to shift. You become more focused, more peaceful, and more in control. The difference is not in your circumstances, it is in your environment. Now understand this, you cannot always control what happens around you, but you can control what you allow within you. That is where your power lies. Emotionally untouchable individuals are highly selective about their environment. They do not entertain every conversation. They do not engage in every discussion. They do not expose themselves to unnecessary negativity. This does not mean they live in isolation. It means they live with intention. They ask themselves, is this adding value to my mind? Is this strengthening my peace or disturbing it? Is this helping me grow or pulling me backward? If the answer is no, they limit their exposure. Now let me take you deeper. Guarding your mind also means being aware of internal dialogue, the conversations you have with yourself. Many people think their greatest problem is external, but in reality, it is internal. It is the voice in their mind that constantly criticizes, doubts, and undermines them. You're not good enough. You'll never succeed. People don't respect you. These thoughts, when repeated consistently, become beliefs, and those beliefs shape your emotions. If your internal voice is negative, your emotional state will reflect that negativity. Emotionally untouchable people do not allow their minds to become a place of self-destruction. They challenge negative thoughts. They replace limiting beliefs. They speak to themselves with awareness and intention. They understand that if you do not control your thoughts will control you. Now, another critical aspect of guarding your inner environment is the people you allow close to you. People are carriers of energy, attitudes, and perspectives. The individuals you spend time with will influence how you think and feel, whether you realize it or not. If you constantly engage with people who complain, criticize, and dwell in negativity, it will affect your emotional state. But if you surround yourself with people who are disciplined, focused, and growth-oriented, it will elevate your thinking. Emotionally untouchable individuals choose their associations wisely. They do not allow proximity to become access. Just because someone is around you does not mean they should have influence over you. They maintain boundaries, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. Now let us talk about focus. Whatever you focus on, you magnify. If you constantly focus on problems, you will feel overwhelmed. If you focus on negativity, you will feel discouraged. But if you focus on solutions, growth, and purpose, your emotional state will begin to stabilize. Emotionally untouchable people discipline their focus. They do not ignore reality, but they choose where to place their attention because they understand that attention directs emotion. Now, here is a powerful truth. Your peace is your responsibility. No one else can guard your mind for you. No one else can filter your thoughts. No one else can protect your inner environment. That responsibility belongs to you. And if you neglect it, you will become emotionally vulnerable. But if you take it seriously, you will become emotionally strong. So what must you do? You must become intentional about what you consume. You must become aware of what you think. You must become selective about who influences you. You must guard your mind daily, not occasionally, not when you feel like it, but consistently. Because emotional strength is not built in a moment. It is built through disciplined habits. In the end, your external world may be unpredictable, but your internal world does not have to be. When you guard your mind, you create a stable foundation within yourself. And when your inner environment is strong, no external force can easily disturb you. You become calm in chaos, focused in distraction, peaceful in pressure, and that is what it means to be emotionally untouchable. Let me introduce you to a principle that can immediately free you from a tremendous amount of unnecessary emotional pain. Stop taking everything personally. Many people walk through life carrying emotional burdens that were never meant for them. They internalize comments, absorb negativity, and interpret other people's behavior as a direct reflection of their own worth. And as a result, they become easily offended, easily hurt, and emotionally unstable. But hear this truth clearly. Most of what people say and do is not about you. It is about them. It is about their experiences, their insecurities, their fears, their frustrations, and their perspective of the world. When someone speaks harshly, it often reflects what is happening inside them, not what is true about you. Emotionally untouchable people understand this, and because they understand it, they refuse to internalize everything they encounter. Now, let us break this down. When you take things personally, you automatically assume that every negative action or comment is directed at your identity. You begin to question yourself. You begin to feel attacked, and your emotional state becomes disturbed. But what if the issue was never about you? What if the person who disrespected you is dealing with their own internal struggles? What if the criticism you received is coming from someone's insecurity? What if the negativity you experience is simply a reflection of someone else's mindset? When you begin to see this, your perspective shifts. Instead of reacting emotionally, you observe with understanding. Now, this does not mean you justify bad behavior or allow disrespect. No, and say, it means you choose not to let it define your emotional state. You respond with wisdom, not woundedness. Emotionally untouchable individuals do not absorb every opinion. They do not accept every label. They do not allow other people's words to dictate how they feel about themselves. They filter what they hear. They ask themselves, is this true? Is this constructive? Is this coming from a credible source? If the answer is no, they let it go. because they understand that accepting every opinion is like allowing strangers to decorate your mind without permission. Now let me take you deeper. Taking things personally is often rooted in insecurity. When you are unsure of your own value, you become more sensitive to how others perceive you. You look for validation, and at the same time, you fear rejection. So when someone criticizes you, it feels like confirmation of your worst fears. But when you are secure in who you are, criticism does not shake you. It informs you, or it is dismissed. That is emotional maturity. Emotionally untouchable people have developed a strong sense of identity. They know who they are, and because of that, they are not easily influenced by external opinions. They do not need everyone to agree with them. They do not expect everyone to understand them. And because they do not have those expectations, they are not easily disappointed. Now, another important aspect of this principle is understanding projection. People often project their internal state onto others. A person who is insecure may criticize others to feel superior. A person who is unhappy may spread negativity. A person who lacks confidence may try to bring others down. When you do not understand this, you take their behavior personally. But when you do understand it, you see it for what it is, a reflection of them, not you. And that awareness protects your peace. Now let us address something important: emotional boundaries. Not taking things personally does not mean you become passive or indifferent. It means you develop the ability to separate yourself from unnecessary emotional impact. You can hear something without absorbing it. You can face negativity without carrying it. You can experience disrespect without losing your composure. That is emotional strength. You see, when you take everything personally, you give people power over your emotions. They can control your mood with their words, their tone, or their actions. But when you stop taking things personally, you take that power back. Now, your emotional state is no longer dependent on how others behave. You become stable. Now, let me give you a practical shift in thinking. The next time someone says something negative to you, instead of reacting immediately, pause and ask yourself, what does this reveal about them, Samanata? That question creates distance between you and the situation. It moves you from reaction to observation. And in that space, you regain control. Over time, this becomes a habit. You stop reacting impulsively. You stop overthinking people's words. You stop carrying emotional weight that does not belong to you. You become lighter, freer, more peaceful. And here is the final truth. You cannot control what people say or do, but you can control what you accept and internalize. Not every comment deserves your attention. Not every opinion deserves your belief. Not every action deserves your emotional response. You have the right to choose what affects you. And when you exercise that right consistently, you become emotionally untouchable. Because now people can speak, but they cannot shake you. They can act, but they cannot disturb you. You remain grounded, composed, and in control. And that is true emotional power. Let me take you into one of the most overlooked yet essential principles of emotional strength: daily emotional discipline. Many people believe emotional control is something you suddenly activate in moments of crisis. They think when pressure comes, they will somehow rise above it and remain calm, composed, and in control. But hear this clearly: you do not rise to the level of your expectations. You fall to the level of your discipline. If you have not trained your emotions in ordinary moments, you will not control them in extraordinary ones. Emotionally untouchable people understand that emotional mastery is not built in big moments. It is built in small daily decisions. It is built in how you respond when things don't go your way. It is built in how you handle frustration, inconvenience, delay, and discomfort. Because those small moments are training grounds. Now let us break this down. Every day, life presents you with opportunities to either strengthen your emotional discipline or weaken it. You face situations where you can choose patience or impatience. You face moments where you can respond with calmness or react with anger. You encounter circumstances where you can remain focused or become distracted. And in each of these moments, you are either building control or losing it. Emotionally undisciplined people allow their feelings to dictate their actions. If they feel angry, they react immediately. If they feel frustrated, they lose control. If they feel discouraged, they give up. Their emotions are in charge. But emotionally untouchable individuals reverse that order. They do not deny their emotions, but they do not obey them blindly. They feel anger, but they choose not to react impulsively. They feel frustration, but they maintain composure. They feel pressure, but they stay focused. This is discipline. Now, understand this. Discipline is not about suppressing emotions. It is about managing them. You are not trying to eliminate feelings. You are training yourself to respond wisely despite them. Because emotions are temporary, but your actions have consequences. If you allow temporary emotions to control your behavior, you will create permanent problems. That is why discipline is essential. Now let me take you deeper. Emotional discipline requires awareness. You must become conscious of your triggers. What situations cause you to lose control? What words provoke you? What patterns lead you into emotional reactions? When you identify these triggers, you can prepare for them. Emotionally untouchable people are not caught off guard. They are ready. They anticipate challenges and decide in advance how they will respond. This is powerful because when the situation arises, they are not reacting in the moment. They are executing a decision they have already made. Now, another key aspect of emotional discipline is consistency. You cannot practice control one day and abandon it the next. You cannot remain calm in one situation and lose control in another similar situation. Discipline must become a habit, and habits are formed through repetition. Every time you choose patience over irritation, you strengthen that habit. Every time you choose calmness over anger, you reinforce that behavior. Every time you choose focus over distraction, you build mental strength. Over time, these choices become automatic, and what once required effort becomes natural. That is how emotional strength is developed. Now let us address something important: delayed reactions. Emotionally undisciplined people react immediately. They speak without thinking. They act without reflection. But emotionally disciplined individuals create space between stimulus and response. They pause. They give themselves time to process what is happening before they respond. And in that pause, they regain control. Sometimes the best response is not immediate. It is delayed. You step back. You think. You allow your emotions to settle. And then you respond with clarity instead of confusion. That is maturity. Now let me show you another dimension: discipline in private moments. Many people think emotional strength is about how they behave in front of others. But true discipline is revealed when no one is watching. How do you handle stress when you are alone? How do you manage your thoughts when you are under pressure? How do you respond internally when things are not going your way? Because your private discipline determines your public behavior. Emotionally untouchable individuals are consistent in both environments. They do not pretend to be composed. They are composed. Now here is the reality. Emotional discipline is not easy. It requires effort. It requires awareness. It requires intentional practice. But the reward is powerful. When you develop emotional discipline, you become predictable to yourself, but unpredictable to others. People cannot easily provoke you. They cannot easily manipulate you. They cannot easily disturb your peace because you are in control. Now, let me leave you with this principle. Every emotional reaction is a test of your discipline. And every time you pass that test, you become stronger. You become more stable. You become more focused. You become more powerful until eventually you reach a point where your emotions no longer control you. You control them. And when you reach that level, you are no longer easily shaken by life. You are steady in pressure, calm in chaos, controlled in conflict. And that is what it means to be emotionally untouchable. Let me bring your attention to one of the greatest distractions that destroys emotional stability: drama. Drama is everywhere. It shows up in conversations, relationships, workplaces, and even in your own thoughts. It is fueled by gossip, conflict, unnecessary arguments, and emotional reactions that have no real value. And here is the danger. Drama consumes energy but produces nothing. Many people are emotionally exhausted not because they are doing meaningful work, but because they are constantly entangled in situations that do not contribute to their growth or purpose. But emotionally untouchable individuals live by a different standard. They are not driven by drama. They are driven by purpose. Now understand this clearly. When your life lacks direction, you will naturally be drawn to distraction. If you do not have something meaningful to focus on, you will find yourself paying attention to things that do not matter. You will engage in unnecessary conversations. You will react to irrelevant opinions. You will become involved in conflicts that have no value. Why? because your energy has nowhere productive to go. But when you have a clear purpose, everything changes. Purpose acts as a filter. It helps you decide what deserves your attention and what does not. It gives you direction, clarity, and focus. Emotionally untouchable people wake up with intention. They know what they are working toward. They know what matters to them. And because of that, they do not have time for drama. Now let me take you deeper. Drama often appears attractive because it stimulates emotions. It creates excitement, tension, and a sense of involvement. But in reality, it is a trap. It pulls you away from your goals. It drains your mental energy. It keeps you stuck in cycles of reaction instead of progress. And the more you engage in it, the more it becomes a habit. Emotionally untouchable individuals recognize this pattern and they make a conscious decision to step away from it. They ask themselves a simple but powerful question. Does this contribute to my purpose? Samititaf untouchable anti. If the answer is no, they disengage. They do not argue unnecessarily. They do not entertain gossip. They do not involve themselves in conflicts that do not align with their values, because they understand that every moment spent on drama is a moment taken away from purpose. Now let us talk about something important: attention. Your attention is one of your most valuable resources. Whatever you give your attention to grows in your life. If you focus on drama, it will expand. If you focus on negativity, it will increase. If you focus on problems, they will feel overwhelming. But if you focus on purpose, growth, and progress, your life begins to move in that direction. Emotionally untouchable people are intentional about where they place their attention. They do not allow distractions to control their focus. They train their minds to stay aligned with what truly matters. Now, here is another truth. People who lack purpose often create drama. When individuals do not have meaningful goals or direction, they fill that void with unnecessary conflict and emotional noise. They seek attention. They create tension. They involve others in their chaos. And if you are not careful, you can be pulled into that environment. But emotionally untouchable individuals recognize this and they maintain distance. They do not allow other people's lack of direction to become their distraction. They stay focused. Now, focusing on purpose also requires discipline, because distractions will always be present. There will always be something trying to pull your attention away: social media, opinions, conflicts, unnecessary conversations. But you must decide what deserves your energy. You must learn to say no, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. Every time you say yes to something unimportant, you are saying no to something meaningful. And emotionally untouchable people understand this trade-off. They protect their time. They protect their focus. They protect their energy because they are committed to their purpose. Now let me take you even deeper. When you are purpose-driven, your emotional state becomes more stable. Why? Because your focus is not on temporary situations, it is on long-term vision. Small conflicts do not disturb you. Minor opinions do not distract you. Unnecessary drama does not pull you in, because you are anchored in something greater. You see, purpose gives your emotions direction. It keeps you grounded when things around you are unstable. It reminds you of what truly matters when distractions arise. And that stability is what makes you emotionally untouchable. Now, let me leave you with this principle. You must choose between being entertained by drama and being fulfilled by purpose. You cannot have both. One will drain you. The other will build you. One will distract you. The other will direct you. And the choice is yours. So decide today, what will you focus on? Will you allow yourself to be pulled into every situation, every argument, every piece of gossip? Or will you rise above it and commit yourself to something greater? Because the moment you shift your focus from drama to purpose, your life begins to change. You become more productive, more focused, more disciplined, and most importantly, more peaceful. Because now your energy is no longer scattered, it is directed. And when your energy is directed toward purpose, you become unstoppable. Nothing can easily distract you. Nothing can easily disturb you. And that is what it truly means to be emotionally untouchable. Let me speak to you about a truth that many people underestimate. The company you keep directly shapes your emotions, mindset, and resilience. If you want to become emotionally untouchable, you must be intentional about who and what you allow into your life. Emotionally untouchable individuals understand that life is a mirror. Your environment reflects back the energy, attitudes, and expectations you allow. If you surround yourself with negativity, criticism, and toxicity, your emotional state will inevitably mirror that environment. Conversely, when you surround yourself with positive, uplifting, and growth-oriented influences, your mind, heart, and spirit are strengthened. Now, let me be clear. This is not about isolation or arrogance. It is about intentional selection. You cannot control everyone around you, but you can control how much influence they have over you. You decide whose voices you listen to, whose opinions you accept, and whose energy you absorb. Many people fall into the trap of being influenced by the wrong people. They allow naysayers, critics, and complainers to dictate their mood and mindset. They listen to gossip and drama, letting those energies disrupt their peace. And before long, they are emotionally reactive, unstable, and dependent on external validation. Emotionally untouchable individuals operate differently. They are highly selective about the influences they allow into their lives. They surround themselves with people who uplift, inspire, and challenge them to grow. They seek mentors, peers, and friends who model emotional strength, wisdom, and resilience. Their circle is not large by quantity, but it is rich by quality. Now, let us take this deeper. Positive influence is not just about people. It is also about the ideas, content, and environments you expose yourself to. Your mind is like fertile soil. Whatever seeds you plant will grow. If you constantly consume negative media, fear-based content, or gossip, those seeds of negativity will grow in your thoughts. If you intentionally focus on uplifting, educational, and empowering content, your mind is nourished with resilience and purpose. Emotionally untouchable people guard their mental environment as fiercely as they guard their physical boundaries. They know that not everything in life deserves their attention. They choose their books, videos, conversations, and experiences carefully. They reject anything that pollutes their mind or triggers unnecessary emotional reactions. Another important principle is mutual growth. Emotionally untouchable people seek relationships and connections where energy is reciprocal and constructive. They spend time with people who encourage them to become better versions of themselves, not people who drain them with negativity, selfishness, or constant complaints. They understand that energy is contagious and it is far better to catch inspiration than stress. Now, consider the subtle ways influence works. Even when people are not overtly negative, repeated exposure to indecision, fear, or pessimism can erode your confidence and peace. Emotionally untouchable people recognize these patterns early. They withdraw from influences that do not align with their vision or values, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. They are intentional about the quality of input their mind receives. This principle extends to your own communication habits as well. The people you allow into your circle will be influenced by your energy too. By maintaining positivity, composure, and wisdom, you also elevate the people around you. Emotionally untouchable people lead by example. They do not allow themselves to be dragged into drama or negativity, and in doing so, they influence others to rise to the same level. Now, let us address one challenge: emotional detachment from negative influences. Sometimes family, colleagues, or longtime friends may carry toxic habits. Emotionally untouchable people recognize that detachment does not mean hostility. It means protecting your emotional integrity. You may remain polite or professional, but you limit the degree of influence their negativity has over you. You maintain your inner peace without becoming emotionally dependent on their approval. Another layer is accountability and mentorship. Emotionally untouchable individuals often seek guidance from those who have already mastered emotional control. They learn from examples, not just theory. They understand that surrounding themselves with wisdom accelerates their own growth. Finally, remember this truth: you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. This is not a theory, it is a practical law of life. If your circle is emotionally weak, reactive, or negative, it will influence you subconsciously. If your circle is composed of strong, disciplined, and purpose-driven individuals, you too will rise to that level. So choose wisely. Protect your mental and emotional space. Curate your influences with intentionality. Surround yourself with people, environments, and ideas that uplift, strengthen, and challenge you to become your highest self. When you do this consistently, your emotional stability becomes unshakable. You become calm in chaos, composed in conflict, and resilient in uncertainty. You are no longer easily manipulated, discouraged, or disturbed. And that, my friends, is the final pillar of becoming emotionally untouchable. To build an environment that constantly reinforces strength, positivity, and growth so that nothing external can disrupt your inner peace.